and reducing technical debt across the DODIN Area of Operations theater session at TechNet Cyber. I am Josh Rinke, Program Manager with Mantech, and we are a proud supporting partner of TechNet Cyber. I am pleased to introduce our next session on behalf of AFCEA International. Colonel Jeff Strauss currently serves as a military deputy for acquisitions at DISA. In addition to military training, Colonel Strauss is a distinguished military graduate of Texas A&M and has 2 master's degrees, one in national security and resource strategy and one in cybersecurity. Colonel Strauss has served 2 deployments in Iraq, where he was also in command of Alpha Company for 28 months. Colonel Strauss has served many other roles for the Army and has numerous military awards and medals. This time I'll turn over this great session to Colonel Strauss, who will introduce the additional speakers.
Hey, thank you so much, and thanks for joining us. And in case you get bored and don't like this session, the fire alarm is to your right, my left. Apparently that worked yesterday, so it's right there. All right. And for those of you who heard me speak before, that's dad joke number 1, and it'll be the only one, I promise, Laura. Okay. But good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. As we discussed today, how DISA is striving to swiftly address technical debt in order to build capacity and rapidly deliver capability to our joint warfighters. I am Jeff Strauss, and I get to work with every day. Our hard work is done in the program executive offices at DISA, and I'm joined here by 3 of our program executive offices. We're also fortunate today to have representation here from our Enterprise Engineering Directorate. And I'll start to my immediate right. Ms. Caroline Bean is a member of the Senior Executive Service and our Program Executive Officer for DISA's PEO services. In this position, Ms. Bean is responsible for the development and acquisition of IT services for the Department of Defense. Her 6 portfolios encompass DOD enterprise-wide services and unified capabilities, business systems, mobility, and warfighting command and control capabilities. Dr. Brian Herman is a member of the Senior Executive Service, and he is our PEO for cybersecurity, PEO Cyber. In this position, he's responsible for the development and acquisition of over 40 cyber defense programs. His portfolios include identity tools, defensive cyber operation tools, and most importantly, our Zero Trust offering known as Thunderdome. Down on the end is Mr. Kritch Paskowski. He is a member of the Senior Executive Service. He is our PEO for transport. In this position, he integrates network planning and execution of the Global Defense Information System Network, the DISA.
Please join us for the networking reception on the exhibit floor from
Okay, thanks for joining the panel.
I got my drink coupon. Got their drink coupon.
I was going to give this out for the first person who asked a question, but all right. It's no coincidence that Mr. Pechkowski's introduction was coincided with the opening of the bar, because if you work in PEO transport, it will drive you to drinking. Because he has a large portfolio, all the global long-haul transport for the DODIN. This is a multi-billion-dollar global enterprise, and he leads several efforts there. Finally, from Enterprise Engineering is Mr. Raj Shah. He is the Senior Technologist and Director of the Enterprise Engineering and Governance Directorate for DISA. In this role, he's a Principal Advisor to the Agency on Enterprise Engineering and Governance and leads the Directorate in support of DISA operations with a focus on end-user experience through end-to-end engineering and disciplined governance across the agency. I want to thank each of these distinguished panelists for joining us today. And I thought we might kick things off with a couple of questions. We'll do this sort of round-robin style, and so we'll give each person opportunity to talk a little bit about each question. But we'll start with Ms. Bean, and then we'll kind of go around the horn. Ma'am, can you explain your portfolio within DISA and what tech debt means in that context?
Okay. Good afternoon. All right, so for enterprise services, Jeff kind of mentioned about all of the different services, pretty diverse portfolio, but one thing's pretty common is that the speed to delivery for my services to the warfighters, to the mission, is crucial and critical. And that obviously has a lot of, that if you unpack that statement of being able to deliver software, being able to deliver service to the warfighters, there's a lot of technical debt that can come with that. And that's at all layers of the OSI model. It's at all layers. It includes people, it includes the culture, it includes the politics. It's not just a cost thing. So technical debt, for me, is not just a cost thing. It's understanding what is in place, whether it's legacy infrastructure or something that has been put in place that is no longer able to be sustained, right? So all of those things is what I would define as technical debt. And it's really important, to understand in my context as far as what it is that as we're delivering, and you'll hear a little bit more about the cyber aspect and the transport, but ideally from the services piece is making sure that there's agnostic capabilities, that I can have flexibility, so that way I can move when technology moves, that I can evolve as technology evolves without too much modernization. And modernizing once is ideal. I don't want to keep modernizing every 2, 3, 4 years. So being able to understand that as we're building in the capabilities from the onset, from the beginning, so that way it's pretty flexible and elastic, so I can continue to evolve the capability, continue to add functionality without having to move or migrate or transition data, infrastructure, my application, and so on. So making sure that it's elastic in nature.
Mr. Shaw?
Yeah, so tech debt does affect overall our DISA's operation as I look at, right? It affects user experience. That is my another title as a CXO, looking after the customer point of view. I thought I was user experience, and the memo I got says customer experience, so now I have to worry about entire customer set. But we say that what we also look at tech debt does sometimes offer opportunity. I like the way she put it, that I don't want to continuously refresh. That doesn't mean you don't refresh your product. That means I don't want to migrate from one technology to another, but the vendor constantly evolve itself, that we don't have to do migration. That was she meant by that. Sorry to correct it there, but I don't want them to say that, okay, never upgrade their product. No, we are not saying that.
Evolve your product.
So, but technical debt, as we have to manage as an organization, and I think we take that opportunity very seriously, and as we work across the PEOs, and we do engineering for Chris, so I technically always say I work for Chris all the time. So he takes a face shot and I don't, or Laura takes a face shot. So, but again, joke aside, it's a serious problem that we have to handle it. What I say is that we have to work with the money that we have, that's constraints that we have, and we are managing accordingly. And we put together more sensors out that's going to guide us our investment strategy. So that's kind of thing I want to add.
Yeah, thank you. So our challenge in PEO cyber is, can you hear that? Okay. So our challenge in PEO cyber is to look at it from two perspectives. I can absolutely use cyber tools to break the user experience. And so when Raj looks across capabilities that are causing problems, it could be a transport problem, it could be an IT service problem, it oftentimes is a cybersecurity problem, something that we do with the best of intentions. But it does, the point is that it requires collaboration across a lot of places. The other part of it is for PEO cyber, it amounts to essentially a cyber risk. When we have capabilities that have not evolved over the course of the last 10 years, think about the threat. The threat has evolved. Maybe 10 years ago we could say that our focus was on reducing costs of IT capabilities because we had a low-tech set of adversaries that we were looking at. The high-end threat right now demands that we think both fiscally responsible but also functionally about the threats that we're facing right now. And so the challenge is you can't put programs like that on a pure sustainment model and assume that they're going to continue to meet the threat that we see evolving over time.
No, great points. Chris Pechkowski, PEO Transport. As Colonel Strauss mentioned, having probably as a service provider, a medium to medium-large service provider worldwide, over 350 different locations, thousands of pieces of equipment at each of those areas that a lot of my engineers keep pointing them out that there's even more and more of them. Having that foundation for a network is essentially like a interstate, intrastate, and routes connecting things up. They have to be up. Mission rides on those. So that equipment does age out. But yet at the same time, if any one of you can say no, that, hey, I don't want that road closure to pave that road, it doesn't get paved. So we often get into that technical debt where end of life and to support equipment is really a key point. Also, some of the configurations, IPv4 versus IPv6 is another thing of how do we migrate over onto that newer technology, which is difficult, and I'll get into some of the other questions a little bit more about that. But having that multi-billion dollars and that equipment continues, and we want to be able to have that for as long and as stable as possible, is a challenge when you're trying to have to constantly go forth worldwide and increase new capability.
Thank you, sir. And I'm an Army guy, so we'll keep it simple. We went left to right. We'll go right to left coming back. So we're going to keep it down there with you. Sir, we said we have technical debt. How did we get here? What's the story and how we got to this level of technical debt?
There's probably a ton of stories, but I'll just tell one that's near and dear to my heart. This past week, I spent the whole time with my in-laws. And my mother-in-law was complaining that she couldn't get her prescription working on her phone. Had a teenager trying to fix it, all that. Then we looked at her phone. Her phone was an iPhone 7, maybe a 6. The application, the software, couldn't get upgraded to do the app to get it to work. But it worked for what she needed. It could make calls, it could do texts, but once you really started to use it for other things, it didn't work any longer. So I'll say that's a challenge that we have in the department, and we're coining a lot of different phrases. I think that the department is a comfortable hoarder situation where something works, I don't need to invest in more. I love these, but I hate these scenarios called FCA TechNet. Awesome, shiny, again, sexy, amazing stuff. I just invested in something a week ago. Now I can't afford for 5 more years to go do anything. And then, oh, by the way, my budgets are going to get hit a little bit. So then I probably can't even do it within 6 years. So I think that's probably one of the core areas there that we're finding that budgets, the complexity of being able to roll stuff out, but yet the complacency that it functions. It works for what I need, but as we continue to evolve, I age out of it, and that makes it really, really hard. And we would say right now, what prevents kind of coming over those challenges, our sustainment budgets are the first thing to get squeezed. And I want something that's amazing and on the outward facing, and they can recognize that, so therefore I want to change it. But in the back office, to make that work, gosh, it's going to cost money, and that's complex. And as I talked about paving the road, anyone can say no, it takes forever. Again, General Cornell up there from imagine managing the Pentagon and having some of the Pentagon say no, because there's a whole bunch of people that can say no and hold that up. So that's definitely a challenge as we get into it.
So I started to say that before, but I'll also say that my 3 immediate predecessors are here, and I personally typically blame them. But the truth is that they were making as good a decisions as possible in the environment that we are in at the time. So I don't really blame them, but I just like to do that as an icebreaker every time I talk to them. But the reality is exactly what Chris mentioned, that the challenge of doing something different means that you have to have funding to invest in the new thing and to make a transition to the new thing, and you just typically don't have the transition dollars available to you unless you go and you get that business case approved by somebody. And so it feels like, from a program manager's perspective, that it's out of the realm of possible if that happens. And sometimes we find that it takes some level of external impetus to drive us to make a significant change. Sometimes that's National Defense Authorization language that says you will modernize the perimeter of the cybersecurity infrastructure for the department. and tell us how much that's going to cost, and you ideally have a way to potentially fund that. In other cases, it's just legacy capabilities aging out, and we have to internally decide what is it that we need to invest in, and that means that everybody else gets squeezed a little bit, because in most cases this stuff is a zero-sum game, and so it ultimately requires us to think beyond individual programs, to think across multiple portfolios to establish what is it that we should be doing. So in my mind, there's a linkage between tech debt and how we get out from under that with technology evolution.
So on that note, right, as I stated before, and Brian stated very clearly, that we have to work with the constraint that we have. And the real world events that happens sometimes, and we have to be agile to respond to help the warfighter out. Guess what? That is getting taken out from the sustainment money for Chris and Brian, right? So when people say how we got it here, this is how we got it here.
So I would add just even though Brian, I can blame Brian.
You're not going to
for
say that I was your predecessor.
Yeah, Brian
now,
was my predecessor, and so I can wholeheartedly blame him. Drop the mic. Okay. No, I would say that technology has changed so much where there's a lot more integration that we're seeing, even within DISA and the department, throughout the department. There's a lot more, throughout all of our portfolios, there's a lot more of an integration across functionality that's happening across the board. And I think what that highlights is in it before, where we could make it stovepiped, right? We all did our mission within our space, but now we are looking at integrating and working together. So the whole reorg, for example, with getting all to the J codes and getting into the PEOs and ensuring that within the PEOs there are like functionalities, so that way we put all of the like functionalities together so we can take a look at our strategic roadmap, the portfolio as a whole, to really take a look at an understanding, number one, where is our technical debt? Because we can look at each of portfolios separately and say, okay, I've got some technical debt, I can kind of tweak a little bit of this screw right here. But really holistically, if you look at the entire vehicle and you look at it wholeheartedly, then you'll get more of the solid picture of a portfolio, a strategic strategy that you can say, okay, well, if I tweak this and tweak this, then you can start finding efficiencies throughout your like capabilities. So that's really something that I think getting after technical debt, or how we got here, is because technologies seem to be more of a stovepipe. There's a lot of things that depend on each other, a lot of dependencies, a lot more that the technology is being able to work together. It's becoming more agnostic, it's becoming more fluid, more elastic. We got the cloud that can kind of stretch, right, as we need it, and then stretch back into a smaller footprint. So there's a lot more elasticity across the board that technology has taken us. And I think it's provided us now the opportunity to really holistically take a look at what that technical debt truly is based on where technology is going. So that way we set ourselves up for the success of future technologies, so we're not constantly doing that modernization and remodernizing multiple times. So I think that's kind of a good indication to have that portfolio management view, so that way you can identify holistically what your technical debt and try to streamline probably some efficiencies, because we're not going to be able to do it all, right?
If I could just add for a second on top of that, we have embarked on a challenging effort to identify things that we can stop doing, and just like the example of somebody in the Pentagon being able to say, no, you can't do an ASI, there is always a constituent that says, keep doing that one thing because I've enjoyed it for a long time and I depend upon it. So it is non-trivial, and we've faced this problem as we also simultaneously expanded what General Skinner described earlier as DAO DISA. But really, it's the cyber terrain that we find ourselves in. We have more enterprise IT capabilities. We have bigger pipes and more bandwidth of various types. We have multi-cloud, hybrid on-prem hosting functions that we provide, and now we're also providing more user enclave services to more customers across the department. And so we're in some cases trying to leverage solutions that were not built for those purposes to do that. And so we have to sometimes make a break and say, here's what we're going to do. And that has has been tremendously painful. Not because people don't want to, but sometimes because we can't.
Well, thank you for that. So we talked about, we put tech debt in context, so described what it is. We've gone a little bit on the journey of how we got there. Mr. Shaw, I'm kind of going to deep dive with you for just a second, and others can chime in if they want to. But impacts, right? So what is the impact of this technical debt from a cross-cutting or a end-to-end interoperability at the enterprise level?
So the first impact is user experience. And the second thing is that technical debt, which is also driven indirectly by user expectation too, right? So before, and I remember when I first came into IT, I know a long time ago, but I could log into 3 systems, it was okay. Now with the touch screen and other thing, I want to log in once. The expectation has changed, right? So again, direct impact is user experience is the first one. Security, reliability, right? So our answer to that, all that security, reliability, energy consumption, you name it, right? Our answer to that is redesign. There is force, like I call always that necessity is mother of invention. So what that forces us to, because we got in a lot of technical debt, is rethink. So whether it's a transport, right? Our answer to Thunderdome is an example. I don't want to take Thunder away from PO Cyber here with Dr. Herman, but Thunderdome, that was out of the box thinking, totally different answer. So taking out, I call it a little bit old VPN technology and looking at SASE solution, that was out of box thinking. So I think impact is huge to the user, lost productivity, force readiness, competitive and strategic advantage. But what we are doing it together, DISA as a one entity working together, putting sensors, understanding where our investment needs to go, and kind of trying to use our dollar stretch very far. As you know, I'm not telling you to call your congressman right now, but we had inflation adjustment. You all got a raise during inflation. Guess what? Budget never got inflation adjustment, right? So when you talk about deficit and all those things, that all impacts us equally. And that impacts user, those users are our war fighters.
And I'll add to that as well, like that last part about the programmatics and the investments and the prioritization. So again, loved by PEO partners. So voice, some of the legacy voice rides on time division multiplexing that we have in the network that we want to get rid of. Does, again, Ms. Bean's priorities align and resources to be able to get off of that onto newer technology? Same time, different types of crypto or other cyber products as well. So it is a massive undertaking, not just for, hey, I know some kernels on the other side over there that can shut off all TDM in the DISA core tonight by midnight. Amazing. Most missions all missions that are using it would end abruptly. And that is just, again, a simple act, but yet there is such a choreographed moment that's required. And I do believe, so that's a newer way, and it's not just us, but it's also our customers. The customers have some legacy, again, nuclear command and control equipment that has been around for decades, and they can't shift. So if we're going to kill the circuits and work it that way. So it is a massive planning, not just, in addition to the customer, great points about the customer impacts, but the planning and from a programmatic perspective is huge for us.
Yeah, and I think from a cyber perspective, the net result is significant cyber risk to the department, and barring the acceptance of that cyber risk, we have to add additional tools to fill gaps, and then we end up with, probably an ill-conceived set of capabilities that provide as good a security as we possibly could. If you heard the last panel, Steve Wallace brought up the JRSS topic. So there was a best of breed kind of environment for cyber capabilities, and it really was at one point a conglomeration of all the best of breed products, but that is not the best practice in the department right now. The best practice is to do zero trust, which is the idea is moving those cybersecurity functions much closer to users. And as we expand the customers that we serve, then we have more of that to do. So there's an interconnectedness between the J6 team that's doing DOD Net and the Thunderdome deployment capabilities. And sometimes the idea that we have some kind of a tech debt evades maybe all of the program level folks and comes from somebody like Mr. Barnhurst with a financial background. He looks at it and says, why does it cost us so much to provide security? Why does it cost us so much to operate the DISA backbone? And are there alternatives? And that's, that is not somebody writing you a user statement. It is somebody making a good observation that there has to be a better way to do that stuff. And so it's not always, and sometimes the answer is our teams also looking across places like TechNet Cyber and saying, there is a better way, and recognizing it. So that means that our teams have to have their eyes open, not to just what they're doing today, but what could be possible, and to also understand things across the DISA terrain and that interconnectedness to actually make it a reality. Once we have something like that, we can make things happen. We can make decisions, but to date, it's been a challenge.
The only thing that I'll add is, just on top of what they're saying, the more resourcing, the more tools we have to put out there to keep up with the cybersecurity aspect of our products, our services. It's taking those resources away from doing the newer things, is moving out and being ready today for tomorrow's fight. So the bottom line is we've got to find capacity, and this is the way to find capacity. We've got to reduce technical debt as much as possible. There will always be technical debt. We will never eliminate it. There will always be technical debt, but we need to minimize it. And so I think a lot of us up here are digging deep within to say, how do we both keep up with the cybersecurity, because we can't let go on those things. So let's continue. We do still have to put resources on legacy to make sure that they're secure and we're defending our DODIN. But in the meantime, also looking through the horizon to say, now how do we move off of this so we can do better, so we can free up capacity and resources to be able to do the things that the warfighters need us to do in this new joint warfighting environment that we're in.
Well, thank you all for your insights there. So we've talked about what tech debt is, how we got here, the impact, and so this is an industry collaboration forum, and so our industry partners are eager to help us. And Dr. Herman, can you speak a little bit about what the department needs and what industry can do to help?
Yeah. So again, the idea of something like TechNet Cyber is a good example of being able to walk around in a pretty short period, be able to see some amazing things that have happened within the industry. So, like I said before, the cyber threats are things that we deal with every day. The challenge is that our teams also have to understand the march or the evolution of technology and how we can use that to our advantage. And so, really is a partnership. And that partnership isn't just at these events. It's the sending me a white paper and saying, let's reimagine something that we do that's maybe perhaps lagging, and how we could get after that by bringing together all the experts across the agency to see if there truly is a better way to do that. It can't just be, hey, I want to sell you my tool. It has to be there are game changers, and there has to be some place for us to establish standards for interoperability, because we know that sometimes the opposite of interoperability is proprietary technologies that ideally lock you into a vendor and provide market share, but the Department of Defense is so large and so diverse, it's unlikely that there will ever be a single solution for most of the things that we do, and so interoperability, in my mind, is an important part of that partnership as well.
I think, yeah, a great point. And I kind of take this also another direction. What can the department do? And I think binding policy, and this is working with CIO. You've got cyber challenges, make that a policy. We need to be moving off stuff. There's cost implications. How do we start measuring what budgets get out there based off of I'll say some of the threat to tech debt. But bottom line, this has to be a priority. It is our job to be doing it and making it a priority. That usually gets pushed lower down, I'll say down the stack or where your cut line is. This, because it's working-ish, we've got to get off of this stuff. So I think that's from an internal to the department. That's I'm talking to Raj to be able to make sure he does all that stuff. But from an industry perspective, exactly where Brian's going, I do think having more effective and efficient innovations baked into your contracts, offer stuff up. How do we evolve and do things? Whether it's, hey, here's a new standards. How do we start leveraging that? Exactly where Brian's going, what he was mentioning. And then as you're in negotiations for contracts with anybody, any of the components within the department, challenge. Just because you're asking for an iPhone 7, do you really want a 7? There's newer stuff. There's other things. There's better things to doing that. So throwing that out there as well. Also, we do like schedules on when things are getting shut off, and having that documented, getting that formal, and being able for us then to be able to leverage that for resourcing and prioritization within our own. And then also, again, this is purely selfish on transport. If you're engaged with any COCOM, Combatant Command, any agency field activity or service, go back to them and ask, hey, how can we bundle to help get off of legacy technology? Throw out, they need some innovation and some challenge and thought-provoking from all of you. TDM's a great example. As I said, I can shut it off today, would be great, but there's thousands and thousands of circuits that would be in jeopardy. How do you engage those folks, whether it's a service to say, hey, I can provide bundled solutions to be able to get after that, but that would just be through normal integration or interaction with the community.
So I would like to add that, so my tagline here is anticipate technical debt. That is always, just like Ms. Bean stated, there is always going to be that. So anticipate, but prevent by policy innovations. Both of them have a big policies that really drive their cost upwards, like a lot of upwards. And then when we can control that together, that's going to excel us. But we also need industry's help for that, right? Because when you guys are proposing solutions through your constituency or through DODCIO, help us and other customers, whether it's COCOMs, whether it's DAFAs, please help us to help yourself. Because end of the day, dollar remains same. It's like energy principle. You squeeze here, you inflate here, you squeeze here. It's a zero-sum game.
The only thing I would add is, so simplifying your architectures, understanding what it is that our architectures are, where we're coming from, and then where we're evolving to, and being able to understand that. So coming with your solutions, understanding what legacy solutions we already have, so that way the technical debt that we would be incurring, or the migration cost that we would be incurring to move from the old to the new, is understood fully. The other thing is partnering within yourselves, and also sharing any information that you all have. Sometimes the department, we're pretty large, and it's really, a lot of times we don't talk to each other. And so there's a lot of solutions that are being offered, duplicative solutions being offered across the board from different vendors, different industry partners, and it's all goodness until we all can't talk to each other. Or we can't share the data that we need. So I think that goes back to the interoperability. I think interoperability is key. We will always have multiple solutions for different things, multiple ways to slice it. But if it's not interoperable, our CJATC2 data-centric environment that the department needs to be getting after, because we all, whatever date you're tracking, whether it's 25, 26, we need to be able to share data together with all of our joint warfighters. So.
Well, thank you very much. Folks must have enjoyed it because no one went for the fire alarm. So, really appreciate, particularly to our industry partners. It's been a long conference so far, and hanging in here till 16:30 in the afternoon. We appreciate your dedication to wanting to participate and understand DISA's challenges. We went on for about 30 minutes here. We want to offer time for any questions that you might have. There's a microphone, and you can ask one or all. You ask one, I bet all of them will have something to say.
Oh, yeah, I know
Yeah.
on this one. And in terms of total disclosure, and my name is Cora Carmody. I'm with DLH and also on the AFCEA Cyber Committee. But in terms of total disclosure, I started my career as a programmer for both the defense and the intel communities. And I don't know why back then we didn't think we'd ever cross the century boundaries. Flash forward, and I was a relatively new CIO approaching Y2K. All right, and we haven't talked about culture. We haven't talked about pouring the cement of of a new system over existing business processes. So the culture of, well, that's the way we've always done it. You know, having a CEO who recognized the value of vanilla is priceless. But could you talk about how culture affects tech debt?
Dealer's choice.
I'll start. I'm sure others will be much more eloquent. But I would say that the idea that teams need to be able to think more broadly than their individual programs is a big part of it, and recognize that their responsibility is to stay current with technology, as well as, in our case, the threats, and think those big picture kinds of things. For us, it has manifested itself in a recognition that we need to hire different kinds of people, and establish the fact that processes are probably as important as the technologies themselves. So it's really that intersection of people, processes, and technology that have to be part of the solution as well.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right that people is a big part of this. One of the ways that educating them, and that's the reason I strongly encourage industry I tell my folks to come here and look at the new technology, but we also have a tech seminar under emerging technology, which goes on weekly, and vendor can participate in that. I personally participated multiple times there. Large group of DISA engineers and the program people dials into that. So that is another way for industry to continuously engage DISA, and that also helps our folks to be up to date. So that industry engagement is a big part of it. And within within DISA, we also continuously encourage continuous learning. So NFCI is a big part of that too.
We have another question down front.
So I'd like to add one more as well. And you'll notice that I keep having to think about program executive office. Since just within less than a year, we were reorged over into a program executive office. I will start by saying I'll put my team up, no offense to everyone else because they want to take my team against for anyone. But the culture we were under operations. We were getting stuff done. Getting it done didn't matter. We were going to get that acquisition life cycle, et cetera, as you heard, again, Colonel Strauss and his background, amazing. Getting that type of mindset, getting in some of those folks. Workforce 2025, what we're doing as DISA, a primary initiative, is a huge push to be getting some of the additional, I'll say, skill sets to augment the ones that we have. So that is working culture. And then, as we mentioned, and the director has actually said in previous ones as well, how we're restructuring a bit, just to further align, to have more of that horizontal. I mean, Raj's shop, much more holistic, doing program reviews that we all attend each other. How do we look for stuff to say, hey, there may be a cliff coming in somebody else's roadmap that I could help, or hey, I may accelerate that, so let's hold off and be able to talk through it. So, but great question. That is not an easy one. That is not. And so I think I still have some of your software in our network, I'm sure. So thanks.
Maxim Volodin, Microsoft Corporation. I have a question. First of all, thank you for coming to talk to us about this technical debt and issues, how you see that. I have a question more like for Brian and Chris. Say we understand that budget limitations and that upgrade cycle is not instantaneous, but our enemies, right, attack us on the cyber side with the new tricks with the new techniques, with AI and all that stuff. And then from a defense standpoint, okay, you cannot say, well, oh, we have a gap here, we have a problem because we didn't upgrade on time. What is the solution, basically, for Department of Defense? How you think? Maybe it's a hypothetical question, but there's definitely issue, right? Because our enemies are coming from state-sponsored and not in kind of hackers, and we need to respond. But if we have a outdated, or I would say outdated software on the cyber side, right? Sensors which cannot catch the new tricks. Or you have a new sensors, right? You have a bandwidth. Like, oh, we have a 3D imaging, or we have and it's terabytes of data in a second. And your transport cannot handle that. So what is the solution? And I know that's not an easy question, but please share your perspective.
So I'm confident that competitive acquisitions aren't the way of the People's Republic of China, and so that is a challenge for us. So in some spaces, we have to think from a technology evolution perspective several years ahead, and implement, deploy tools that allow us to have the flexibility to evolve. So there's a partnership aspect to that. Sometimes we're looking at threats that are fundamentally different, and that requires something more emergent. But when threats are evolution of existing kinds of problems, we typically have tools in our tool bag that allow us to make some kind of at least initial evolution. We may find ourselves 5 years down the road with tech debt because we haven't addressed the fundamental shift that perhaps is going on. And so for me, I think part of what we're doing is having Intel-informed acquisitions. So we have the new DISA J2. Their job is not only to tell us whether there are potential threats or problems with the solutions we're putting in place, but informing the threats that we're facing as we begin those acquisition programs, so that we can think through that based on the activity. I think there's always going to be the tension between speed and agility, but I think we've achieved some significant speed advantage with things like OTAs when we absolutely need to. So I know it's a point of frustration. We would all like to do everything faster, but I think we're making some headway.
Yeah, and so great points. Additionally, we're focusing on diversity, and here we are trying to continue to foot stomp to get rid of time division multiplexing. We have an IP network. We have an optical network. So we have multiple, I'll call networks, which is good and bad. That's a little more ponderous to be trying to sustain. But we do try to get multi-vendor, being able to, again, I know everyone here wants everything and understand, but we would rather have one of everything from that perspective, just in case something happens. Another close tie that we have for help, in addition to the J2, fantastic new group stood up, but still leveraging our risk management team and understanding where they value risk and from an accreditation perspective, so that we can actually use that as a key decision point for us. So while we have an opportunity, and likewise, why we're doing program reviews across the agency, there's ways other folks are smarter than any of us. So being able to understand and leverage that, hey, I may have something, or Raj may say, I got a new sensor I'm testing out. That may be able to help out a little bit, or again, working with other cyber products or other types of services.
So our answer to that, of course, we need to make sure at any cost our enemy doesn't have to follow the same rule what we have to follow. So our answer to is labor, right? And how can because I can't stretch dollar, I can't print money. I'm not allowed to print money, I wish I can, but, or my kids at least think they can. But how can I stretch my dollar? So the answer to that is AI ops, intelligence engineering, and simplicity. So we remove the complexity as we modernize ourselves and reduce our cost that way, and rely on other technologies. So I tell sometimes people, unless and otherwise you really have a cyber needs or the rule that you have to follow, give me 80% solution. I'm fine with it. Because everybody has their favorite tool in the world. And you name it, I have it. Right? So that's another way we are going after that.
Okay. Well, I know the bar is open, but we're. You can still ask your question. That's okay. These people can wait. I don't know. That guy in the back there is shaking a little bit. Maybe he can't wait, but.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. John Corlett with Arista Network. So I find this whole subject of technical debt fascinating, and I really didn't know much about it until today, and I saw it on slides, and it kind of scared me. What do you have any methodologies that you do? Caroline, you mentioned you don't want to do a refresh on a particular product, every 3-4 years. When you're buying a new solution, what are the things that you're thinking to avoid that solution going into life? Are there any processes or procedures or thought processes that you go through to identify the risk that product will go into support or will contribute to your technical debt? Thanks.
I think that was directed to you, Caroline.
So I'll share what I'm doing. POs probably have other ideas as well, and this isn't just a prescriptive thing, but I think what I talked about before with putting like capabilities together, so that way I understand what the ins and outs of and the entrance and exit criteria of each of those products, and then what the data looks like holistically, allows me to set the stage for my portfolio management aspect. So number one is identifying where all my technical debt is, or at least most of where the big ones are. The second thing is starting to get after it and understanding technology. So these folks talked about understanding what is out there, understanding how we can potentially do better with the technology aspect, and then the people and the workforce part of it as well. So upskilling. So there's something that I'm doing within my PO. It's just a way to kind of get the folks to step away, the program offices to step away from their day-to-day fires that we're constantly fighting, because we're just in that mode. We're in firefighting mode a lot. Taking a step back to be able to take a look at, technology, take training, upskill our employees so that way the new technology isn't so scary, right? I've still got mainframes. I will tell you, I still have mainframes and business systems, and I'm still running, decades-old type data standards for the finance world, finance and the contract world, and we're starting to move to a new data standard. So the one thing that we are doing, what we're going after is modernizing, right? We have to modernize our legacy systems, but I don't want to continue to modernize. So we're looking at ways on how we can have, for example, processes, understanding what our processes are. And sometimes it's not taking your process and then trying to go sit in a room and look at this process and figure out how I can streamline it. Sometimes it's putting sensors on the process, identifying, throwing it into a platform or a workflow type process and analyzer, and it tells me how long it takes for just my old process, and then potentially utilizing maybe some AI or ML or other technologies to try to identify ways that I can potentially automate that process or streamline it from 30 steps to potentially 5 steps. And helping the user force and helping the workforce to understand kind of that is where we're going, and then upskilling them so that way they're trained to say that there's probably a better way than the 10 steps, right? It's going back to also identifying user stories. So when we talk about requirements, don't tell me that this is how I want it, because it's really hard for folks that understand that have had the legacy. They've been working in it for quite some time. They know what they're looking at. They know what they want to see. But sometimes you got to pivot them and say, no, don't tell me what you're looking at. Tell me what you need in order to get your job done. What do you need? What data points do you need? What types of data do you need to input, and then data that you need to go out? What view are you looking at? So looking at all of those things and identifying that, I think, is part of the way in getting after some of your technical debt, and then making sure that you understand what's in the horizon to slowly start piecemealing, because again, you're not going to be able to do all of it. You have to do it in phases.
I know I'm supposed to just be the moderator here, but I'm a PM by training, and so I want to. We talked about how industry can help us, and if you were here this morning, I'm sorry you're going to hear it again. In helping us help ourselves, you do business development, right? In business development, I had a lot of industry come talk to me. There's good BD and bad BD. I know that sounds like something that penicillin won't fix, but it really, there is two different kinds of business development. If you come to try to talk to me about your product and what your product can do, that is not great BD, right? Buying individual products is how we got in this mess, right? It's a good thing because that's America, but good BD. Good BD understands the global problem, my specific problem as a PM, and then you tell me how to get to you. You give me the easy button to push. Tell me what contract you're on. Tell me you're an 8A small business. I can write a letter contract, right? That is good BD if you are a PM, right? When I want to engage with industry, right? And so I'll offer to you that because if you have solutions for tech debt, how we manage it is we're never going to buy it all the way out. What we have to do is buy down risk. And so if we've talked to you about the global risk right now, right? But if you come and do a little research at DISA, you can find out what our specific risks are and then offer us a solution to our highest risk items and a way to execute with you to drive down that risk. That is what we need. In a nuts and bolts, step by step, that is what we need. So sorry, I didn't mean to jump on the SE. I couldn't help myself. I tried.
I can't help myself but add one thing and give me a phase approach. Don't tell me this is all you can get at a one time because there is not enough dollars sometimes to buy all your meal, right? I might have to get away or get by with just a breakfast and skip the lunch, right? So first year I might breakfast, next year I'm gonna skip a lunch, next year I'm gonna buy a lunch, and then I'm gonna buy dinner. That's how I'm gonna finish my cycle.
And again, I want to piggyback that I have some of my core folks here. Keep communicating. Ms. Laura Bayless runs my engineering organization. I got my chief architect, Mr. Mike Pawkins, and then another chief engineer, Chris Ratliff. We engineer and architect based off of what we hear and how to work at it, and it is an ecosystem. We take great pride in being able to bake in multiple things to be able to get after it. So from that aspect, again, I do thank you from an industry perspective, continuing to challenge, communicate. I think that's a key word, challenge. Again, iPhone 7, we'd still have those in a lot of places if that wasn't the case. So, but thank you.
And it's a journey. It's not an on-off switch.
Well, I know we really appreciate your time. We're at the end of our session here. On behalf of the warfighters who consume the DISA services that DISA provides, thank you for our PEOs for joining us up here for what you do. And for the members of the audience here, you are here because you're committed to the defense of our nation. We appreciate your support and thank you for what you do every day. Enjoy your evening and please be safe.